Hi, my name is Vic Barrett, and I'm happy to be here as a host for Vote Safe Live 2020. On behalf of the partnership organizations bringing you tonight's show, Headcount, the National Vote at Home Institute, the Andrew Goodman Foundation, Future Coalition, and March On, welcome to some serious civic engagement. Tonight, we bring together art, activism, and education with a few calls to action thrown in there, all focused around the most important topic facing Americans right now: voting. Not just voting, but voting safe. As a first time voter, I know I'm all in. Tonight, we brought together a group of national experts to deliver to you what you need to know about voting in the times of COVID. What exactly does that look like? To kick it off, I'd like to welcome Amber McReynolds of the National Vote at Home Institute, with special guests former Governor Jennifer Granholm of Michigan, former Governor Tom Ridge of Pennsylvania, and two sitting Secretaries of State, Secretary Jocelyn Benson of Michigan and Secretary Ken Wyman of Washington State. It's worth noting we have two Republicans and two Democrats working together to ensure that you can vote safe. Here's the first panel: Vote Safe 101. Give us the ballot. And I'm going to throw it over to Amber McReynolds, CEO of the National Vote at Home Institute.
Well, thanks so much. And thank you all for being here tonight and coming to this digital rally. There will be some pretty great and awesome music and messages here in a few minutes, but we really wanted to kick it off in a strong way with some important information that will help you get a better sense of what your options are to vote in the upcoming presidential election in November. And depending on where you live, it may not seem like the pandemic is happening, but it's still such a thing. And it's a big deal right now in the country. And we don't know what it's going to look like in the fall. So it's important that we all have a strategy for how we're going to vote while staying safe. There are a few key ways to do that. First off, voting at home. Second, early voting, which exists in many states around the country. And finally, being safe and voting on election day. As the CEO of the National Vote at Home Institute, I'm a little biased, but if you haven't ever voted in your PJs at home, I highly recommend it. On this panel tonight, and I'm really excited for this panel because they're all amazing leaders that are committed to voters and providing good service to voters and serving our citizenry in an amazing way. And they're all also good friends, and I admire all of the work they do. So to be able to introduce them is in and of itself an honor, and being a part of a panel with them is a tremendous honor. So first off, we have two governors. So as mentioned, Governor Granholm, former Michigan governor, and Governor Ridge, former governor of Pennsylvania, and also Homeland Security Secretary. And then two current Secretaries of State, Secretary Wyman and Secretary Benson, both of which I have come to know over the past few years and find them to be incredible leaders, and also deeply committed to serving voters in their states and frankly voters across the country. So with that, first over for Governor Granholm, the first question is for Governor Granholm. As the first female governor of Michigan, you have deep experience working day to day to meet the immediate needs of people in your state. And rather than sort of playing politics or introducing partisanship, it's important to serve voters, and you certainly demonstrated that during your time. Often people don't realize how local and specialized the election process is within states, and how important it is for their local election offices to serve voters in a meaningful way, and how much it varies by state. So why is this such an important time for mayors and governors to lead on making voting safe and accessible for all voters?
Yeah, thanks, Amber, and thanks to you all for coming. Let's make this a blowout election in terms of participation, and vote by mail can do that. So elections, contrary to some who may believe that they're run at the federal level, elections are actually super local. Sometimes the cities that are right next to one another are going to even have different rules themselves. But it's up to mayors and governors to act on behalf of voters to make sure they have access to their rights, like voting. And often voting policies are set by state legislatures or election boards. But governors play a key role, especially in times of crisis, like during a pandemic. In some states, governors can declare a state of emergency and set terms separate and apart from the legislature that are going to allow people to vote safely. So, for example, with COVID during the elections we've seen so far this year, like the primaries that have happened up to this moment, it's been really important for governors and mayors and secretaries of state to change policies where they can to make voting easier and not more difficult. I do want to stress, I'm a Democrat. Tom Ridge, who you're going to hear from in a minute, Governor Ridge, is a Republican. Let me just stress, this is totally not a partisan issue. 65% of Republicans and 79% of Democrats agree that more people should be able to choose to vote by mail. Unfortunately, even during this pandemic, we're seeing less, not more, access to polling sites. For example, in Texas, 750 polling places were closed. In Arizona, 320 polling places were closed. In Georgia, it was 214, and Louisiana, 126, and so on. So while people are at greater risk of voting because of the pandemic, it's become harder and harder physically to do so, which is why voting at home or voting by mail is so important. So what does it mean to make elections easier? Things like easy access to ballots, making sure election officials have got the money that they need to get ballots to voters so that voters don't have to pay themselves to put the stamp on, but it's prepaid. Offering early voting so that people can go and vote early and not have those lines. Make sure that people really, when I think about the lines and the polling places, I also think about the people who are actually working at those polling places. So we want to also make sure that people who are working the polls have what they need to keep themselves and the voters safe. Just one argument that you might hear about voting at home that we've heard some leaders talking about is that they say that it increases the opportunity for voter fraud. Let me say that this is utter BS. Voter fraud is extremely rare. The Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative entity, has found that over the last 20 years, there's been the equivalent of one case of voter fraud per state every 6 to 7 years. It's really the equivalent of being hit by lightning. Voting at home, because of the way the ballots are tracked when they're sent to your house, they're tracked to see if they come back, they're coded, they're verified to ensure both safe and accurate voting, not the opposite. So bottom line, register to vote, get a mail ballot or request an absentee ballot, get your friends to do so as well. Vote safe, but most important, exercise your civil right to decide who is going to lead our nation. Thank you so much, Amber.
Well, thank you, Governor Granholm. And that's like, I'm like over here, yay. Okay, so thank you so much, Governor Granholm. And now I want to go over to Governor Ridge, another amazing partner to the National Vote at Home Institute and the Vote Safe Coalition, co-chairing with Governor Granholm, of course. So Governor Ridge, as former governor as well of Pennsylvania, you have experience not only at the state level and in state leadership, but you also have a national perspective of having served as the first Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security following 9/11. And we know that getting your ballot in the mail and voting at home is a safe and secure way to cast a ballot, even though sometimes that's not always clear in some of the national narrative. So can you speak to the safety and security that mail ballots offer, particularly while voting in a pandemic?
Amber, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to participate along with a distinguished group of panelists. And I just want to put an exclamation point after what my friend and colleague, Governor Granholm said. This notion that there's fraud associated with the historic absentee voting is I borrow a phrase from the President of the United States, that's fake news. The fact of the matter is people have been voting absentee ballots since the Civil War. The fact of the matter is that almost over 20% voted absentee in an election that the president won. The fact of the matter is that two of our colleagues on this panel, secretaries of state, Republicans and Democrats in all 50 states, worked very hard with about 10,000 local officials to make sure that whether you're voting in person or you've used an absentee ballot, that it is a safe and secure enterprise. So let's put that one to rest. The other thing I really enjoy about this forum is the two words, vote safe. I'm going to say to the young people that are in attendance and participating in this wonderful, wonderful exchange of ideas. Politics and governance is about tomorrow. The leaders you select on November 3rd, local, state, and federal, will have a lot to do with your tomorrows. And if you knew my age, you would know that you've got quite a few, you younger voters have far more tomorrows than I do. So vote, register and vote. Obviously, I'm a partisan, but I don't care whether register Democrat, register Republican. It would be amazing to me if, as one of the unintended consequences of COVID-19, which is a painful, horrific experience for this country, and then simultaneous with all the racial unrest caused by a rogue policeman killing an unarmed black man. If during this conversion, this tsunami of events, that we maximize registration, maximize voting, and if the primaries are any indication, there'll be a lot more people voting absentee. And I would like to think that we'll take the number of absentee voting much higher than the 22% in 2016. But as importantly, we'll go from 61%, literally only 6 out of 10 Americans who voted in 2016. 40% of America stayed home. And I would say, and I don't mean to preach to you, young or old, but as an elected official and now just as a private citizen, I've never felt that voting was a privilege. I've always felt that it was a civic responsibility by virtue of your being a citizen of the United States of America. So vote. The other side of it is vote safe. I think it would be helpful if the Congress that has already spent a couple of $1 trillion to try to help relieve some of the economic distress would appropriate additional dollars to the secretaries, to the governors and secretaries of state in order to help them do what they need to do. So again, vote safe, and we'll look forward to the discussion after our colleagues have an opportunity to share their thoughts with you as well this evening. Thank you for letting me join you.
Thank you, Governor Ridge, and thank you for those comments. And I think it just again highlights the importance of this issue really being nonpartisan. And it's simply about making the process and the system work well for all voters. And you can see that already demonstrated by our two governors, and you'll certainly see that with our upcoming speakers now. Secretary Benson, I'd like to go over to you, and I just want to verify, is your connection okay?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So thank you for being here, Secretary Benson, and thank you for all of your amazing work that you've done in Michigan and leading various reforms and changes over time. You've gotten high-profile attention. You've gotten high-profile attention for expanding safe voting options for the people of Michigan, where you serve, and you've been teaming up with icons like LeBron James as of late to make sure that all voters can participate in the November election. There are some elected officials and election officials, and many people don't necessarily get the difference and understand the role. So can you explain the importance of your role as the Chief Elections Officer in the state of Michigan, and what that really means for election officials like you across the country in terms of your role for this upcoming November election?
Yeah, thanks, Amber. And you said it great, which is this is about making sure people can vote. It's not about who people vote for. It's whether people can vote. And that's so important. And really, the secretaries of state are the chief election officers in the majority of states in this country. We have the role of overseeing our election administration, but in that way, really serving as the chief guardians of the elections process and protecting voters, protecting their access, protecting the security. And so it's our job, our responsibility to educate voters about their rights, to ensure they know all the ways in which they can cast their ballots, and also ensuring that as things change, as they do from election cycle to election cycle, that voters have all the information they need to know to cast informed votes. But it's also interesting this year because I've always said, I actually wrote a book on the secretaries of state serving as chief election officers, serving as guardians of the democratic process. But this year more than ever, we have an important role to play also in standing guard against the misinformation and false information that's flowing into states like Michigan, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, states that have a high profile in this year's elections and therefore are getting a lot of attention from both sides. We're also getting a lot of attention by efforts from foreign adversaries, domestic adversaries, bad actors, malicious actors, or just hyper-partisan actors who want to confuse voters about their rights, about the sanctity of the process as a way of sowing seeds of doubt in the sanctity of the process itself. And that's why Vote Safe is such an important initiative, because it's our job as secretaries of state to really communicate how every citizen can have the certainty that they can vote. They don't have to sacrifice their health to do so. They can vote safely and securely in our state. And we're up against a mountain of well-paid efforts to misinform the public. But we have an important role to play in pushing back to make sure that the public is fully informed.
Great. And just for the audience, Secretary Benson is in upstate Michigan right now, so her video feed is really tough. And so we got to hear her voice, but the video feed was freezing. So I just wanted to let everyone know that was what the challenge was with the video feed. And thank you, Secretary Benson. I know you're hard at work around the state and traveling, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us. Now we're going to go over to Secretary Wyman from the great state of Washington. The sort of, I guess she's approaching the sort of end of the workday period of time where a lot of the country it's later in the evening now. But Secretary Wyman, Washington state was the first to get hit hard by COVID. But your citizens and the voters of Washington were still able to participate in primary elections due to the safe voting options that voters in your state have enjoyed for years. As many other states are figuring out how to solve the problem of safe voting and make sure that every citizen has access to a safe voting process, you've been able to show Washington as a great example of how it can be done in a meaningful way. Can you walk us through the big takeaways that every voter should know to vote safely ahead of November?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Amber. And here in Washington, we followed Super Tuesday, which feels like it was 10 years ago, I think now. I feel like COVID is making it like dog years, where time passes very, very quickly, but it's really not moving as fast as you'd think. But we had our primary for the presidential primary on March 10th. And that was when our state was starting to see the first wave, and I think we were leading the country on COVID-19 cases and people dying from it. And so we saw it really hit in the last days before the election, and we did see it dip our turnout. But I'm really proud to tell you our turnout was high. In fact, I think right now we're running probably the third highest in the country for presidential primary turnout. And that is in large part because we are a vote by mail state. And I think that everyone, hopefully all of you that are watching this great Vote Safe, what do I say, rally live get together, is that we really want to energize you and make you aware of your options, because there can be so many barriers to voting. It might be that on election day you have to work, or you have childcare issues, or maybe you're in school and you can't get away to get to your polling place and cast your ballot or get to a vote center in time before it closes. And so what we really want to do is empower you. And I think Washington State has some great lessons, because we've been a vote by mail state, or as Amber keeps reminding me, a vote at home state. Our voters have been choosing to cast their ballot at home for well over a decade now. And we have high turnout and engagement by our voters. So it's a great thing. And it gives voters the option to vote over a 20-day period. where they can decide when they want to cast their vote, when they want to put it in a ballot drop box or a mailbox and get it back to election officials. And so what I guess I want to really encourage all of you that are participating tonight is, first and foremost, find out what the rules in your state are. And you've heard it from all of the speakers tonight that it varies widely. And in fact, it can sometimes vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. By that, I mean county to county in your state, or maybe even township or city to city. So find out. And now is a good time to do that. I would encourage you, if you have already been registered to vote, and I know many of you are, is that right now check and make sure with your county or your local election official if your registration is up to date. Have you moved since the last time that you voted? And if you're not registered, how do you do that? And they've got some just great opportunities tonight to connect you with your local election officials so you can get registered tonight. But that's the first step. And then beyond that, you want to see what you need to do to actually engage and actually cast your ballot. So if you're in a state like Oregon or Washington or Colorado, and let's not forget Hawaii and Utah, you get to vote by mail every election. And the election officials are going to send that ballot to your home. But if you're not in one of those states, or California, who just added that feature, what you want to do is find out what you need to do to get a ballot. It might be turning in an absentee ballot request. It's a form you have to fill out. It might be an old-fashioned paper form. I know that probably is something that is out of the realm of possibilities in 2020, but find out now and sign up for a ballot to be delivered to your house. And then you're going to be empowered to vote when it's convenient for you on your schedule and when you're able, and it won't be a barrier to you. Beyond that, if you don't need to, if you haven't signed up for that, do it. And let me make sure I get everything else. Also, if you prefer to vote at the polling place or at a vote center, you want to try to help us flatten the curve. If everyone shows up on election day, that's when we get long lines and it makes it hard to vote safe. And we want you to participate and we want you to vote safe. So if you can vote early and there's an early voting option in your jurisdiction, make sure you do that. You know, find out when the voting center is open and go to the voting center and cast your ballot. And if you wait until election day, make sure that you're safe. Bring your protection, personal protection mask and gear, because we want you to participate, exercise your right to vote, have your voice heard, and most importantly, be safe in the process of doing that. So whether you vote at home or vote in person, make sure you're safe, and most importantly, make sure you vote. This year, it is so important. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Secretary Wyman, and thank you, Governor Ridge, Governor Granholm, Secretary Benson. Thank you all for being here and being a part of this rally. And to everyone on the call, a couple of things, and you heard this consistently across all these amazing panelists. First, make a commitment to vote this year and encourage your friends and everyone around you and your family. Make that commitment. And then do what's been talked about, register to vote and update your address and do it today. Do it as soon as you can. Don't wait until October. It's better to take care of those things now and check and make sure that you're registered to vote. And then make a plan to vote. And if you can sign up to vote by mail, which many states right now, you can actually sign up to do that right now in various states across the country, or make a plan to vote early. Whatever that plan looks like, make a plan to vote. And then obviously, if you're not going to use one of those many other options and you're going to vote on election day, make a plan to do that and think about it in advance and encourage your friends to do so. And then the final thing I would say, which we didn't talk a lot about tonight, is one of the biggest gaps in the election process, and it's particularly been difficult with COVID, is finding enough people to be poll workers and election judges to serve the public across the country. And that's an issue that every single election office across the country is facing. So while we want you to vote and we want you to do all those things, it would also be great if you have time, or if you have friends, or if you want to do it in a group, to sign up to be a poll worker and serve your community in that way. And there's lots of different roles that you can play in that process. And I promise it's a fun way to learn about the election process, engage in the community, encourage others to do so. And it's a great way to get involved. So with that, I hope everyone enjoys the rally tonight. There's going to be some incredible artists and music and messages, all with an effort to encourage everyone to vote safely this year. And thank you all for being here tonight and committing to turn out and vote this year.